A man would die in one of the worst deaths imaginable. But was it an accident? Did he do it to himself? Or was it something far more sinister? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Dave Bocks. Viewer discretion is advised. David Anthony Bocks was born on November 4th, 1944 in Staten Island, New York. Now, eventually Dave would move to Ohio, specifically, I guess, the Fernald area. Dave had been married, and then him and his wife did have 3 children together, but somewheres down the line, he and his wife got divorced, but they remained very close. They remained very close friends, especially for the benefit of their children. There are indications, or I guess rumors, that when Dave and his wife initially divorced, Dave kind of went into a bit of a depression and began to struggle with some mental health issues, and that he had attempted to end his own life. Those claims are not validated. It's just really more of like the rumor mill. That being said, it is confirmed that Dave did suffer through some mental health issues, and some people say that he was diagnosed with having schizophrenia, but that he was on several medications to basically help him out, and that he was very, very good about taking his medications. And for the most part, Dave always seemed to be in a pretty good mood. He seemed pretty jovial. He enjoyed life. He loved his children dearly. He would never leave his children. But whatever may have been going through the mind of Dave Bocks around the time of this story is really kind of unknown. Now, in 1981, while living in Fernald, Ohio, Dave was hired as a pipe fitter. And this was at the Feed Materials Production Center, which I guess was also referred to as NLO. This factory basically was kind of like the main hub of this little community. It's what supplied the most jobs to people there. It employed thousands of people. What most people didn't know, though, about the Fernald plant is that it was actually owned and operated by the Department of Energy. The people there who lived in this community never really truly seemed to know exactly what this plant did. Some people assumed it was actually owned by Purina, the brand who makes, animal food. And this is because of a large, water tower that was there on site that kind of resembled the colors and the logo of Purina. But it was just speculation. No one truly knew what happened there. But the grim reality is that the plant actually processed uranium materials. According to individuals who had recently worked there and no longer do, they had to all sign non-disclosure agreements before being formally employed there. They had put out to the public that the plant, produced very, very low-level radiation levels. That actually wasn't true. What was actually happening was that it was putting out very, very large levels of radiation in the form of radiation dust. Specifically, radioactive uranium dust being poofed out into the atmosphere of this community. And because of how poorly it was all handled, it actually caused a lot of contamination. Between 1951 and 1989, the Fernald plant produced 170,000 metric tons of, uranium metal products. And it wouldn't be until 1984 when the public finally learned about all of this contamination, all of this radioactivity in the area, and so the plant and the town was rocked by scandal. Shortly before this scandal broke out, something sinister happened at the plant. It was June 18th, 1984. 39-year-old Dave Bocks was working at the plant. Now, Dave, along with many, many other people, worked kind of like a graveyard-style shift there at the plant, and Dave would carpool with one of his coworkers and good friends. The two of them would meet at a White Castle restaurant there in Ohio, and they would get into one car and they would drive to the plant, and then they would kind of reverse the roles back and forth. So Dave, he went to his locker when he got to work. He got out his toolbox, and everything was basically set up. Now, throughout the evening, Dave was just doing his job, and his job was he was supposed to inspect, the pipes in the factory, and his role was to like maintain equipment and just do maintenance basically for these pipes. Now, sometime around 4 a.m., a coworker would later report seeing Dave in a pickup truck with a person they assumed was his supervisor. It was hot, muggy, gross like night, right? But both the windows were rolled up and the truck wasn't on. And they just thought that was weird because it was so hot and if the car wasn't on, the AC wasn't running. But the two men in the car were having what looked like a heated argument about what, to this day, nobody knows. Who that supervisor is, his name or her name has not been released to the public. And then at approximately 5 a.m., another coworker sees Dave walking towards Plant 4, which was odd because Dave didn't work in Plant 4, he worked in Plant 8. This would be the final time anyone would see Dave Bocks alive. Then, at 7 o'clock in the morning, the team, I guess, in one of these plants would hold a big safety meeting, something they did on the daily. And Dave Bocks had to be at that meeting, and he was always at the meetings, except for this particular time. He was a no-show to the meeting, even though they knew he was there. So the friend / coworker that rode with Dave to work that night, he went to the maintenance building. He was going to put his stuff away for the day, and then he was going to see if he could find Dave because it was time to go home. And he saw Dave's toolbox still out. Nothing appeared to have been rummaged through yet, but there was no sign of Dave. So that coworker goes to the security office, and they say that they haven't seen Dave leave. This coworker thinks this is weird, but maybe Dave is doing some kind of overtime work in a different plant. He didn't really know for sure. At approximately 7:30 in the morning, an operator in plant number 6, he would tell supervisors that there was a strange sticky residue outside of the furnace he worked on, and that there was this very unusual odor coming from the area of this furnace, something they had never really smelt before. The supervisor allegedly checked out the furnace, looked around, kind of looked at this weird residue and said, meh, it's fine. And then said, just go back to work. And so they did. They went back to work. Now, this coworker that he carpooled with, he would ended up driving back to the White Castle restaurant after his shift, just to see if maybe Dave somehow got taken back there without him knowing, and maybe he took his car and went home. But when he got to the restaurant, he noticed that Dave's vehicle was still parked where he left it before they left for work. So the coworker just wrote out a little note. The note said, Dave waited until 10:45 a.m., finally went home. Sorry, Harry. And then he left that note on Dave's windshield. Now, the following day, it was supposed to be Dave's turn to drive to the factory. So the coworker goes back to the restaurant the next day for the next shift. Lo and behold, Dave's vehicle is still in the exact same spot. The note is still there. Yet there's no sign of Dave. There's no sign that Dave ever even got back to his truck. This coworker, Harry, he feels the engine of the truck, and it's like ice cold. So no one had driven it recently at all. And so he was like, okay, something's wrong. So he drives to the factory, and he tells them something's weird. Like, Dave is nowhere. Where the hell is Dave? So he would report Dave missing to the security people at the factory. The security people would open up Dave's locker, and there really wasn't anything unusual. And again, Dave's toolbox was still out where he left it the day before. So now the factory, they begin to do kind of like their own internal investigation into where the hell Dave is. One, they do a search of the entire grounds to see if they could find him. They don't. Then they find out that Around the time Dave may have gone missing, now we're at 5:15 in the morning on June 18th, 1984. This is back before people realized Dave was truly missing. Well, there was a sudden change in temperature at 5:15. And this occurred in a furnace in plant number 6. The temperature had dropped 28 degrees. What that tells people that work there is that that very sudden drop in that kind of temperature means that something foreign was dumped into that furnace. What that something was, nobody really knew. So now the police get involved because did Dave fall in and nobody knew? What was Dave doing in plant 6? That wasn't the plant he really worked in normally. He was last seen entering a different plant as opposed to the plant he normally worked in. It was all very strange. Along with the sticky residue found on the outside of the same furnace that had a very sudden drop in temperature. So yeah, the police get involved and they basically have the plant drain this furnace. And it actually takes 3 days to do. It's like molten liquid, so it's not like a simple, you pull a plug and it just gets drained. So the molten liquid had to cool before they could do anything about draining or looking into it. So when that finally happens, 3 or 4 days later, they're finally able to look inside the furnace and they find some strange things. They find a set of keys. They would determine that those keys belonged to Dave Bocks. And the keys matched padlocks of his. And one of the keys was bent pretty badly. They also found the toe of a steel-toed boot. They found pieces of a set of glasses, that Dave would wear. They also found the remains of Dave's walkie-talkie. They then found steel wires that were looped into these circles. They didn't know what that was. And then they found bone fragments, later determined to be human bone fragments. They also found tiny bone fragments, I guess, within that sticky residue that was around the edge of the furnace that may have bubbled up and spread onto the lip of the furnace. And that's when they realized that the bone fragments, with Dave missing, with Dave's keys, Dave's walkie-talkie, Dave's glasses, those bone fragments were Dave's. Dave had fallen into, some way, somehow, into molten lava, basically, or, molten liquid, uranium waste, whatever you want to call it. He fell into it. Now, at first, they're like, oh my God, Dave accidentally fell into this furnace. But they would determine that just simply accidentally falling into this type of furnace was not something that was really possible. I mean, just the overall center of gravity of a person, the height of the furnace, it's not something you just trip and fall into. It's not something you stumble and fall into. There would just be no way a person could just simply accidentally fall into this furnace. So they had to rule that out. There was just so many safety regulations, so many safety aspects to this that they could just determine that's not what happened. So then they think, oh my God, Dave dumped himself in there. He jumped into that furnace. This is not a quick way to die. All right, this is not an implosion in a sub, right? This is not an instant death. This is something that would take at least a little bit of time for you to die. It probably would happen fast, but it's something that's going to process in the human brain of, oh my God, this is the most painful thing ever. This sucks. This is awful. This is horrendous. It's not a pleasant way to go, to basically burn/melt to death in this extreme temperature. It would have been an absolutely horrific way to die, and for someone to do that to themselves is something you really just can't fathom. You can't process that. How would someone want to do that to themselves? If you're going to do it to yourself, why not just do it with a gun? Jump off a building or something, something that'll happen instantly the moment you hit ground or the bullet goes in your head. Why would someone do this? And that's when Dave's mental health stuff came into play during this investigation. They're like, okay, so there's this rumor that Dave may have had schizophrenia and he was medicated for it. Again, that rumor has never really been corroborated, but it is known that Dave did have mental health issues. The fact that Dave had apparently attempted to end his own life during the divorce, also not corroborated, just more like rumors. His ex-wife, his children at the time, his family, all of them said there is absolutely no way Dave would end his own life. He loved his children dearly. He would never abandon them. He gave no indications prior, which, to be fair, a lot of people who do end their own lives don't necessarily give any indication ahead of time. There may be no signs of a person's depression. It is possible. But again, it's just like, why this way? Why this way? And then this is where the investigation gets a little iffy. Remember how I told you at the beginning that basically in 1984, that's when the scandal came out that this plant was releasing a whole bunch of radioactive dust into the air, contaminating the surroundings, while lying to the public about it. Well, Dave's death happened about 5 to 6 months prior to this scandal breaking out and becoming public. So the timing of this is a little strange. This is because Dave knew about what was going on. Dave found out. Earlier I said Dave was last seen going towards plant number 8. Plant number 8, that was the plant that released more radioactive material than any other plant, 4 times as much as any other plant. This is not a plant that Dave worked in normally. He normally worked in the other ones. So why was Dave walking towards plant 8, but then was found in plant 6, a plant he also didn't work in? Well, he also had that argument about an hour before he was last seen walking to plant 8 with a supervisor whose name has not been released. They were arguing inside of a pickup truck. It all adds up that Dave found out about the radioactive material, about the contamination. Dave confronted a supervisor about it, possibly being a whistleblower, someone who was going to blow the cover on this, because this was about the safety of not just the people who worked there, but this is about the safety of everyone in this entire city. And then he's seen walking into the plant that has the most issues and then never seen again. It sounds like Dave was going to go into that plant to confront that plant supervisor, higher ups, and say, listen, I know what's going on. And so the thought that some people have is that Dave was likely shot. He was struck over the head. He was incapacitated in some way, shape, or form. And then, in the cover of darkness, was taken to plant 6, where he was dumped into the furnace, where he would burn/melt to death, however, whatever happens in that scenario. And the other thing that people found strange was that his keys were later found in that same, furnace, right? Well, the friend who had driven with Dave that night, when he looked at his toolbox before saying, hey, I'm going to leave without Dave, his keys, Dave's keys and padlock were there with his toolbox. And this was after Dave had already basically gone missing. So how did Dave's keys go from his toolbox to now being in the furnace? Well, people believe that someone may have gone back, grabbed his keys, threw them in there to make it look like he had fallen in, or that he had jumped in because his keys would have been on his person. The nightmare about this is that you have to kind of hope that Dave was unconscious when he went into that furnace. Because if he was alert, it's one of the most horrific ways a person could go. Absolutely horrific. It's a nightmare scenario. This is something that you would not wish upon your enemy. It's awful. But the police investigation didn't really lead to any wrongdoing either. Again, who the supervisor was that Dave was arguing with in the truck has not been released. Did police really investigate this? There is also no proof that Dave did know about the plant's misdealings. There is no proof to say he was going to blow the roof off the place and be a whistleblower. There's no proof of any of it. There's no proof also that he jumped into the furnace himself. There's no suspects. There's no individuals that Dave, other than this mysterious supervisor, had gotten into any kind of arguments with any fights with. It's all just a bizarre, unsolved mystery. How did Dave Bocks end up in that furnace? Did somebody put Dave in that furnace? Did he jump in? Did he find some very bizarre way of accidentally falling into it? Unlikely. But at the end of the day, Dave Bocks lost his life in one of the most brutal ways a person can go. And his children are growing up without a father. His ex-wife has lost one of her dearest, closest friends. And the world just lost an overall good guy. I have a very hard time believing that Dave jumped into that furnace himself, because that is just not a way someone would do that to end their life. I can't say that for sure. It just doesn't make sense. To me, it sounds like somebody put Dave in that furnace, but the investigation didn't really lead to any suspects. It didn't lead to any answers, and so we are left with the mystery of what caused Dave Bocks to end up in that furnace. How did Dave end up in that fiery, molten grave? Unless someone comes forward with information, we may never know the answers. But that's actually it for this case. That's the end. There really is no solid conclusion for you. What do you guys think? Accident? Suicide? Murder? What happened? But if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video and see me for the very first time, hi, I'm Mike. It was weird. I tell true crime stories here. Yeah. So please subscribe and give this video a like so more people can see it. I also tell multiple true crime stories a week over on TikTok, so please follow me over there. It's in the link tree in the description of this video below. If you have a case you want me to cover, please email me. It's also listed below. Just email me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add it to my list. I pick my cases at random, so it will happen eventually. I just couldn't tell you exactly when I'll cover that case. If you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell like t-shirts and hoodies and a wine glass and stuff like that. We do ship internationally as well. Also in the link tree below. And then finally, if you want to join my Discord server, you sure can. It's also in the link tree below. Please be over the age of 18 to join, or else you'll be kicked out of there. Sorry. But that is it for this video. True crime, maroony doony dingleberries. Yeah, dingleberries again. All right, let's finish with a dad joke from Live, Laugh, Lose, like I've been doing a lot lately. I gotta read the joke in whatever delivery it tells me, and it's gonna be a really awful joke. So, read the joke like a pirate. Oh, good, one of my best. Okay. Arrgh! Do I lose when the police officer says papers, and I say scissors? Do I lose when the police officer says papers and I say scissors? One day there'll be a good one, one day there'll be one that's actually kind of funny, but not today. I'm sorry.